And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists, the Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green. You are Florida Gator fans getting ready for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. And, let's address something quickly before we get into this year's game. I had Gator fans reach out to me. The stadium's getting renovated in Jacksonville. The game's going away. Well, it was announced earlier this week, or was reported earlier this week. Atlanta in 26, Tampa in 27, and I'm totally fine with that because that means 28. The rumor is it's coming back in the stadium of the future, and it's going to be glorious. So it's just like when the renovations happened in 94 and 95. Same thing here in 2026 and 2027.
If you heard any of Frank Frangi's show yesterday, he talked about this, and I totally agree with him. He said he said that he believes the fact that they're still doing neutral sites the 2 years that they got to go away from Jacksonville makes it all that more clear that they're keeping the game in Jacksonville.
It dollars make sense. People are wondering, why isn't it home and home? Because revenue. They get more money for neutral site games. That's the reality of the situation. So, yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. And I think it'll be kind of unique having this game in Atlanta one year, having the game in Tampa the next year. I think that'll be fun. Would it have been nice to see Georgia come to the Swamp? Yes. Would it have been nice to have Florida go between the hedges? Yes. But at the end of the day, dollars make sense, and that's why this decision was made.
Yeah, and something else that I keep crediting Frank, but I thought he was spot on talking about this whole topic. And he's obviously, in the know with stuff that's going on with that. And of course, he and Greg McGarrett here, the Gator Bowler, are good friends who obviously kind of knows the behind the scenes financially of what that looks like and everything. Something that Frank brought up too, which again was also a good point. With the way that NIL is now, Hack, even the wealthiest schools in the country, even your Bamas, even your Ohio States, even your Georgias, even your Floridas, your Texases, even those schools that have the most money still need more all the time because of NIL, right? So, Kirby for forever has always talked about wanting to have that game in Athens every other year because of recruiting purposes, which I understand. I get his perspective.
Notice he hasn't said that in a while, though.
Bingo. And ding, 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 ding.
And quickly, you know why he hasn't said that in a while? Because I think he got called into the principal's office and was told to knock it off and was explained the situation.
That is probably part of it. And also, because if you think about the timeline here, Kirby's been the coach there for a while now.
Yeah.
And
what Kirby says goes in Athens. There's no doubt about that.
Correct.
Except with the exception of when he was touting that move the game out of Jacksonville. It's the only thing that they went against him on.
And to your point, the last few years, he's been a little bit quieter about it.
Very quiet.
Well, I don't disagree with you that probably the powers that be in Athens sat down and were like, hey, man, you need to relax on this a little bit. The second thing here is Kirby wants that NIL money. Yeah. Kirby recruiting that NIL money is just as important a factor as anything else. It's just as important. It's probably more important in today's world than those visits on campus. So you're talking a gigantic difference of money that both schools are going to make every single year having that game at a neutral site, typically Jacksonville those 2 years, Tampa and Atlanta, versus the games being home and home. Again, with how much every single program, even the wealthiest programs, need that cash now, if you have a built-in excuse to have a cash cow once a year like that, like Florida and Georgia do, like Texas and Oklahoma do with the Red River rivalry, like that type of game, the way current college football is constructed, those games are going nowhere because there's too much money to be had.
All right, so let's dive into the game coming up tomorrow. We're recording this on Friday morning, the cocktail party. Georgia is a 14.5-point favorite, but that's come down like 3 points, which is interesting.
Dylan and I did our podcast yesterday morning, and it was 16.5.
Yeah, but it might go back up because Jason Marshall and Trey Wilson are out for Florida. Couple of things. Get to the game in a moment. I want to start on Billy Napier. And I asked Denmark about this. Denmark produces Hacker After Dark. You do the Denmark and Marsh podcast. So I asked Dylan this. I want to ask you the same thing. Dylan was done, and a lot of Gator fans were done with Billy Napier after Miami and were absolutely wash your hands done with Billy Napier after Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Now he's won 3 out of 4. Probably cost him the Tennessee game, which doesn't help the argument, but they played well in that Tennessee game.
Yeah.
And as we talked about last week, they've shown improvement. They've put some W's together. Right now, prior to the kickoff against Georgia, are you still done with Billy Napier? Because you've been pretty vocal about that as well on this podcast. Or is there a glimmer of light for Billy Napier in light of what's happened in the last month?
Yeah, no, I've sort of come back on it a little. I've gotten to the point, Hack, where, and I think, I'm trying to remember, I believe it was the UCF game where I sort of changed my tune a little bit on this. And Dylan knows this too, because I've kind of been the more, let's be a little more patient here, and Dylan's been more like, no, we got to move on. I'm at the point now, Hack, where I'm not like totally done, no questions asked, like they should have fired him yesterday type of thing anymore. Where I'm at now is knowing you got a 5-game gauntlet, really a 4-game gauntlet, and then Florida State ahead of you. Knowing that you need one of those games probably, plus Florida State, to get to 6 wins and then make a bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get to that point, then it becomes a question of, okay, so those other games you lost, how did those look? Did you get run out of the stadium? Did you get embarrassed? Did you have an A&M and Miami situation? Or was it more Tennessee where maybe a couple coaching gaps cost you, but you were competitive in the game? You belonged on the same field, and you arguably should have won the game. Basically, my point is, I've gone back a little bit. I've backpedaled a little bit to the point where the cement is not completely dry for me yet. Doesn't mean I'm all the way back. Doesn't mean I'm pounding the fist for him to have a year 4. Doesn't mean I'm pounding the fist for him to be fired. It means that I know that they're only a little bit more than halfway through the season right now, and they've got a lot of football left to be played against 2 of the best football teams in the country coming up in their next 2 games, including tomorrow at 3:30. I'm an open book right now to Billy Napier.
You know,
I'm simply clean slate's not the right word because you got 2.5 years of a program. Clean slate is the wrong term. But I'm just open, basically, is what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm gonna simply watch the game with clear eyes and say, Billy, prove to me in these next 5 games that I can be optimistic about a year 4 for you. That's where I'm at.
The interesting thing, we'll get to the interesting thing to me about Billy Napier and what's coming up primarily in the next 2 weeks after we tell you about Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can log on to their website by going to se-ortho.com, and you can listen to Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, the good doctor, Kevin Murphy, on Thursday mornings in the 7 o'clock hour with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in the world of sports. There is not the biggest Gator homer imaginable watching or listening to us right now. You could be drinking the orange and blue Kool-Aid, wearing the orange and blue goggles with your orange and blue ball cap on, and I still would find it hard to believe that anybody watching or listening to us right now thinks they're realistically going to beat either Georgia or Texas. I just don't believe that. And I think if you believe going in that they're going to actually win against Georgia or Texas, I want whatever it is that you're drinking. You're smoking, because that's some terrific stuff. Having said that, there are different types of losses, and I agree with you. 48-10 is vastly different than 37-24. With all that being said, and knowing that a lot of people are still very, very, very lukewarm at best on Billy Napier, Is he playing with house money the next 2 weeks? What does he really have to lose? No one's picking them to win.
Yeah.
Most people want him still gone. If for some strange, unrealistic reason they happen to win either Georgia or Texas, I don't care what happens in the last 3 games. If he gets one of these two, he's back in 2025.
Yeah, I agree. There's not a world where the Florida side of the Florida-Georgia game is somehow leaving the stadium victorious, celebrating a victory, and Billy Napier's not the coach in year 4. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I mean, it pretty much is house money because the only thing he has to lose is getting embarrassed in either game. That's the only way that...
If it's 48-3, that's a problem.
Correct. Or if it looks like A&M or Miami did, which these two teams are better than A&M and Miami, but I think Florida's playing a lot better, so I think the game will look different. If it looks like one of those games where it's like they just didn't show up today, why do they even kick the game off? Why they should have just forfeited the game before we even kicked off? If one of those games happens, then we're right back to square one. Mm-hmm. We're right back to where we were after the Miami game, after the A&M game. To your point, as long as they compete above that level, it is a little bit of house money. And a lot of people listening to this might be thinking, hey, that's loser mentality. We can't have a coach in year 3 where we're saying that type of thing.
Well, some people call it loser mentality. I think you and I call it realistic expectations.
Yeah, and, there was somebody commenting about that, this is a defeatist attitude and loser mentality in the Gator Facebook comments the other day when Dylan and I did our show. The players and the coaches, yeah, but we're not going out to play the game.
No.
So we're saying what we realistically believe is going to happen from 10,000 feet. Yeah, sure, yes, if DJ Lagway is going in saying man, I just hope we don't get killed, that would be a problem. Hacker and Graham don't have to think that way.
Yeah, I don't know how many Gator fans watching or listening right now are putting 50 or 100 matchsticks on the table with their Georgia buddies saying Florida's going to win the game straight up.
Yeah.
I would tend to doubt most of you are doing that. So if that's a loser mentality for us, you're saying, well, that's a loser mentality. Well, and wager something with some of your Georgia friends if you're that confident.
And I think we talked about this. We talked about this maybe before the Tennessee game, Hack. I want to say it was either before the Tennessee game or the Kentucky game. In our award-winning Gator Bytes episode that week, we had kind of talked about how, in the here and now, if Florida was gonna, I think it was a Tennessee game, if Florida was gonna show up and compete and make that a game, then that's a win for where the program is. That's a win for Billy Napier, and that should be something to be encouraged by.
And it was encouraging. It was discouraging how the way it ended.
Correct.
But it was encouraging the way they played for 90% of that game.
Right. And I think two things are true, Hack. I think it's true that in the micro and the here and now, given the circumstance of their program, given how things have gone, given where they are, it was a win. But I also understand the point that from a macro perspective, when you have a coach that's 2.5 years in, just being competitive against Tennessee, being a win is a bigger loss.
No, look, I totally get that. And if you're a fan, I totally understand that. But again, you look at it not from a player's perspective, as you said, but from media and fans' perspective alike. None of us picked Florida to win this game 2 months ago. None of us picked Florida to beat Georgia a month ago. And none of us are going to pick Florida to beat Georgia today for tomorrow's kickoff. The expectation has always been Georgia wins this game. And most of us, myself included, a month ago, thought Georgia might win this game by 40 points.
Yeah.
I no longer feel that way. I think Florida is better. I think they've improved. Their defense is better. Even without Wilson and Marshall, which are big, I mean, and even in the wins they've had against Kentucky and UCF and Mississippi State, Wilson hasn't done all that much. It's been the running game. It's been Badger. It's been DK.
He didn't even play in 2 of those games.
Right, the tight ends. I mean, so you're basically back to where you were. Obviously, much different competition with Georgia. I get that, but I don't know how big of a loss Wilson is from that standpoint because they've proven they can play without him. Having said all that, Georgia, to me, is going to win the game. If Georgia doesn't win the game, it will be one of the bigger upsets this series has seen in quite some time.
It won't be the biggest upset of the college football season because Vandy beat Alabama, but it would be probably second.
I'd have to go back. I'd have to honestly think about that. I mean, well, Florida, I bet if there was a top 35, top 40, Florida might be in it. They're not in the top 25, but I think they were in others receiving votes 2 weeks ago after the win over Kentucky.
ESPN's like FPI rankings, have you seen those, like the analytical rankings that they do? Florida's ranked in that. They're like 15th.
I mean, the bottom line is, and this is what we've grasped at, covering the University of Florida or being a fan of the University of Florida right now, the best thing you can say is that they're not terrible. But guess what? 5 weeks ago, we thought they were terrible. I no longer believe they're terrible. And to me, that's improvement. As I told you guys last week, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. Graham and I, and everybody here on 1010XL, we can't go back on what we say because it's very easy to go back and find what we said a month ago. People have very short memories, right? I am willing to bet after A&M that most people watching and listening would have never believed they'd be 4-3. Never would have believed they'd be 4-3.
I sure as hell did not.
And never would have believed they're only a 14.5-point underdog to Georgia. But that's the reality. Give Billy Napier credit. Kept the locker room together. The team is playing hard for him. The running game, Jaden Ball looks like a stud. DJ Lagway's been very good. I think Badger and DK have been every bit as good as you would have hoped coming out of the transfer portal.
Agree.
From that standpoint, things have gone well. Now, the competition obviously gets much tougher. We've been talking about this quote-unquote gauntlet for a while. So the expectation is that things aren't going to go well. But again, I have Georgia 34-20. That's what I said on Hacker After Dark last night. I think 14.5 is about right. Now, does that mean it's 34-13 and Florida scores with a minute to go to make it look a little better? Perhaps.
But that could also mean 27 to
yeah, and Georgia puts it away with
game
5 minutes to go.
Yeah, and Georgia has a backbreaker with, exactly.
I think Georgia wins the game by 2 touchdowns. And I think if Georgia does win the game by 2 touchdowns and the game goes as I envisioned, from a Gator historical reference, or at least the last 30 years, people are going to be pissed. But if you honestly look at what the expectation was 30 days ago compared to where we are now, if it is 34-20 against Georgia, I don't know realistically how you can be mad about that.
So that kind of gets back to the point I was saying. I think with Billy Napier, I think there's 2 different schools of thought right now. And you just presented one of them, which is in the micro, in the here and now, you have to be encouraged by what he's doing. You have to be encouraged by the fact that with as disastrous as the season started, for them to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and play this well so far.
Play hard, man. They play hard
really
for Billy Napier.
Play really hard. There's some dudes on defense that are really starting to step up and prove that they're good players.
Jacksonville's own, man. Jack Pyburn out of the Bowles School. Dude's been a beast.
Other Jacksonville's own, Grayson Howard, is having a good season so far.
Jaden Robinson. I think he's a Lake City, Columbia kid.
And not a Jacksonville kid, but Aaron Childs has been – he's had a hell of a season so far. Last couple weeks.
Aaron Gates.
He's been really good. So anyways, again, in the micro, in the here and now, I don't really know how you could be anything but encouraged by how they've played. I don't know how you could say anything but, hey, this is improvement. Hey, this is something that we can build upon. Hey, this is something to be proud of based on how the first couple weeks were and how bad it was. And for them to look this good is kind of surprising and very, very encouraging. That's a good sign moving forward. That's the one school of thought right now. The other school of thought, and I understand this, and I get, because I think most people that are still like, no matter what, you got to get rid of Napier, are in this second camp, which is, man, are these expectations low for a guy in year 2.5? Mm-hmm. And man, when you hired Billy Napier 2.5 years ago, before the 2022 season kicked off, you'd still be a 14-plus point underdog to Georgia. Like, at this point, you would have hoped that a coach that you hired to be a great recruiter, to bring Florida into this century, and to get them competitive again, this would be like a top 10 matchup by this point.
And that, to your point, that's what people will pivot to tomorrow. And I guess that's what I'm saying. The same people that are going to say that tomorrow, if Georgia wins by 2 touchdowns, and the same people probably saying that and commenting about it right now, are also the same people that didn't think Florida would be 4-3 after the 1-2 start. Well, so in their eyes, Billy can currently do no right. They're going to find fault with him, whatever he does.
And that's kind of what I'm saying, Hack, is like, I'm not saying I'm in that camp, but I'm saying I don't think that's a ridiculous camp to be in. I don't think you're not crazy to think that. You're not crazy to be like, no, this is Florida. By year 2.5, you should be better than this.
Right. But it's also fair to give credit where credit's due.
Correct. Yes, correct. I think that's just what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't think either side of that is like an idiot right now, is what I'm saying. I think right now, if you're building the case for Billy Napier and why he should still have a shot to prove himself for year 4, you're not crazy to have that argument. And if you also think this experiment's kind of over, man, we need new blood, it's just not working out, I don't think that's crazy to think either.
Look, and I said on here,
I'm kind of leaning towards where you are. But again, to what we said a minute ago, if they get run out of the stadium, which I don't think is going to happen, but it's definitely possible.
Sure.
There's a world where that happens. We're right back to square one.
And look, I said on here, I said on Hacker After Dark as well, that, especially after A&M, that I couldn't defend Billy anymore. Because I was, you know this, I defended Billy Napier the entire offseason. I defended him even after Miami. But after A&M, I couldn't defend him anymore. I mean, that was indefensible how bad they looked. And I'm almost upset that I said that at the time, because it does kind of make me look like a hypocrite to an extent.
So I wanted to address that real quick, because I'm sorry to cut you off, but I know you just said that a minute ago. You're kind of talking about how, like, you know, for us, because this is recorded, it's easy to go back and find whatever. I get what you're saying, and that's not wrong. But at the same time, I think that it's part of probably a conversation about our business and a bigger, you know, from a 10,000-foot view. But for the here now with the Gators, like, because I've heard a couple people comment, because like the last couple of weeks have kind of gone back a little bit, like, hey, let's pump the brakes on firing Napier or whatever, when I was more aggressive about it first couple of weeks. And people are like, well, you know, don't go back on your word. What changed last month? What changed last month? Well, what changes? They play better.
Well, that's the thing. I've been doing this 22 years.
Like, we're allowed to watch the games and adjust our opinion based on the new information we see on the football field.
Agreed. Now, I've been doing this 22 years, and I'm very fortunate to have been doing it 22 years, and I love it. My thing is, I always try not to be the hypocrite. I always try to not have such a strong take and then completely, like a month later, have a completely different take, unless I admit that I was wrong, because I don't think enough people in our business admit, hey, man, I was wrong about that. And I think admitting you're wrong is very good.
We both did that last week about Graham Mertz.
As far as
when Mertz was hurt, got hurt, and he because he's done.
Yeah, no, when Mertz came to Florida.
Yeah, we were both like, man, we did not think he'd be as good as he was.
Right, and I think in our business, and really in general, football fans, sports fans, the biggest arguments, particularly on social media, is people flat out, without a shadow of a doubt, 100% not wanting to admit they were wrong about something.
100%, yeah.
And it's hilarious to me. The world will continue if you admit you were wrong. I mean, it's not a big deal. And I'm wrong a lot. Graham's wrong a lot. A lot of us here at 1010XL and a lot of you are wrong a fair amount of times in their sports takes. And I like to point that out, at least with myself. Having said that, I'm almost back on the Billy train. It is easier to defend him now than it was after A&M, because there is something to be said for keeping that locker room together. You know, McElwain, they were done with McElwain. The fans were done with him. The players were done with him.
Well, the players is what matters, because you can always win the fans back if you start playing.
I don't know if McElwain could have won the fans back, but Mullen, same thing. Players were done with Mullen. The fan base was done with Mullen. I've always compared this to Muschamp. The fans, I think, genuinely liked Muschamp. I think most of you genuinely like Napier. It just didn't work out with Will, and he didn't get an opportunity to correct it. Billy is trying to buck that trend of Muschamp, where he's getting an opportunity to correct it, and he's doing it to an extent. We got to go quick here, because I want to preview the rest of the games and actually give our predictions on Florida, Georgia. If they go to a bowl game, you said this earlier, and I completely agree with you. If they win 2 of these next 5, and they're 6-6, Billy Napier's back in 2025.
Yeah, I agree.
Wrap your mind around that. If you don't want Billy back, well, I don't know what to tell you. Because if they go to a bowl game, I think he's going to get 2025. It's like I go back to what we said last week, and I'll give my guy Jesse Simonton of On3 credit for this. Great take on the movie The Princess Bride. There's a big difference between being mostly dead and all dead. And as they say in that movie, when you're all dead, you can only go through their pockets and look for loose change. When you're mostly dead means you're slightly alive, as the great Mad Max said in The Princess Bride. Thank you, Billy Crystal. And I think that's what Billy Napier is. He's slightly alive now because they've won 3 out of 4. And if they were to pull off Georgia or certainly Texas, man, he's going to be back in 2025, and he would have earned that. All right, Southeast Orthopedic Specialists brings you Gator Bytes every week, 1010XL.com and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Southeast Orthopedic Specialists is Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center. They provide an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. Quickly, before we look at the other games, Graham, and focus on this matchup and give our predictions, your expectations for how the game kind of goes tomorrow. DJ Lagway, the offense, the defense, what's your thought going in playing against a Georgia team that is probably better at every single position on the field?
My thoughts are, and I think Dan Hicken, I've heard him say it a couple times this week, and I agree with him. His whole thing is, okay, you got two teams that are overwhelmingly better than you the next 2 weeks, right? You got Georgia and you got Texas. In one of those games, get me to the start of the fourth, where you're kind of looking to your left and your right, and you're like, they got a shot.
We said the same thing about Tennessee. Survive the first 20 to 25 minutes.
And
because Georgia's going to come out and want to do a kill shot early tomorrow.
100%. And I'm glad you said that, because that leads me to what I was about to say. Dylan and I talked about this the other day on our podcast. If you've watched Georgia this year, what they are missing offensively that they've had the last couple of years that they clearly don't this year is the home run, back-breaking, explosive plays. They're still Georgia up front. Trevor Etienne's been pretty good for them. I think he was actually better in a Gator uniform, but he's been a good player for them.
They really miss Bowers and McConkey.
Yes, because I mean, think about just the game here in the last couple of years, Florida Georgia. Usually, at some point in the first half, in the last couple of years, the way this game has worked, because Bowers and McConkey were there for a while, is Florida sort of hanging around, maybe only down 7, maybe even tied. They're sort of there. It's kind of competitive. And then, boom, Brock Bowers, that tipped the miraculous catch he had a couple years ago, 50-yard touchdown.
Or the Anthony Richardson game where Florida went from down 7 to down 1 million in 2 minutes.
Right. Ladd McConkey has also ripped Florida apart. You know, slant pattern, crossing pattern, whatever, down the field for McConkey, catches it, slips one tackle, jukes another guy out, he's in the end zone. And then Florida, and then the game kind of breaks open. Georgia they have not had that guy this year that sort of takes the top off and blows games open to dominate teams like they have in the last couple of years. I believe firmly that that's the number one reason that when you look at the Kentucky game a couple weeks ago, Kentucky was hanging around. You look at Mississippi State a couple weeks ago, Mississippi State was hanging around. I believe that's why. I think Georgia's clearly better than those teams by a significant margin, but they don't have that guy down the field that's going to just completely break the game open and make the game 52-14 or whatever. That's definitely advantage Florida to keep a lid on things. Not to win, not to whatever, but just to make it to where, to you said, survive the first quarter. First quarter's like, okay, we're here. Halftime, okay, still a game. End of third quarter, might be teetering, but they're still hanging around. That type of game is what I'm hoping for the Gators in my heart of hearts. Realistically, I think they can get there like midway through the third, and we'll see how long they keep it competitive. I said 34-21, so we're right almost there in the exact same spot.
34-20, you're 34-21. And don't do anything out of character. Don't do anything stupid. Don't try a fake punt or on 4th and 1 do a jet sweep. Keep it simple.
Or the snap last year between Mertz's legs to Etienne. That
I actually, you know what's funny about that? He got so much grief for that. Dude, if that worked, that's a genius move. That's Monday morning quarterbacking at its finest. And I think you and I even talked about that. I think Denny and I talked about it too. If that would have worked last year, oh, what a great call. But because it didn't, everybody killed him. I mean, again, Sunday morning quarterback in this instance. All right, quickly. Tomorrow, not a great slate, but an interesting slate. Ole Miss is hanging on by a thread to playoff hopes. They go to Arkansas. I think if you're in the camp of Billy, we want him out, we want Lane Kiffin, as many Ole Miss losses as they can get would behoove you. Does Ole Miss have problems in Fayetteville tomorrow?
Yes.
You sound like you're in deep thought about that one.
I was.
You really digested that.
I went back and forth a couple times. Yes, they are.
And it's a clunky game. It's a noon kick, 11 Central on ESPN.
Ole Miss is going to win, but they're not going to be like thrilled about how the game goes.
You think Sam Pittman's still in the hot seat, 5-3 overall, 3-2 in the conference? He's kind of saving himself a little bit too.
Yeah, his seat's cooling off for sure. They're the oven's powering down.
Yeah,
I would say. So, I mean, he was the one guy that might have been above Napier on the hot seat to start the season. He's definitely cooled himself off a little bit.
Interesting game, 12:45, SEC Network. Vandy goes to Auburn. Auburn played their best game of the year. Kentucky's terrible, by the way, last week in beating Kentucky. Vanderbilt, you kind of wonder where they are. They put so much into Texas, lost that game by a field goal, and now they got to go to the Plains. Again, 11:45 Central in Auburn. They're not exactly going to be a rowdy bunch there at Jordan-Hare. What do you think between Vandy and Auburn tomorrow?
Give me the doors.
Yeah, at Auburn.
Give me the doors.
Wow, that'll be bad for Hugh Freeze if that's the case.
Give me the doors.
It's a little cooler now. Oklahoma's going to kill Maine. By the way, Oklahoma, welcome to the SEC. It's not the Big 12 anymore, Sooners, but they'll win tomorrow. Massachusetts, Mississippi.
Man, you talk about a coach that should be talked about on the hot seat more. Venables is not good. They have not been good.
The hot seat talk's coming for him.
Yeah.
I know people out there that cover OU. They're not happy.
I mean, what's going on, dude?
Yeah, no, they just gave him a contract, too.
For them in the Red River rivalry a couple weeks ago to just keep Michael Hawkins in that game when he couldn't do anything, I was like, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah, it's been a bad first year for the Sooners. UMass, Mississippi State. Boy, bless anybody that actually watches that. 4:15 on the SEC Network. And then tomorrow night, Texas A&M goes to South Carolina. Texas A&M very much in the playoff conversation. Mike Elko making a case for National Coach of the Year. They've won 7 in a row after that opening night loss to Notre Dame. Nighttime at Williams-Brice in Columbia. That could be a tough one, though.
This is for A&M, this is a prove who you really are kind of game. If they're really legit like that, if they're really that type of team this year, they jump out early and they step on their throats and they don't give South Carolina and that crowd, a great crowd in Columbia, don't give them any type of oxygen. If they're playing a little bit above their weight class right now, then they probably struggle in that game.
Yeah, I like A&M, but again, going to Columbia is tough. You want to talk about hot seat talk? I'll tell you where it's coming. Is in Lexington. They're going to get tired of that pretty quick. They're awful this year. Mark Stoops, and they go to Knoxville tomorrow night, 7:45 on the SEC Network. Tennessee should destroy them, correct?
I think so, but I think Tennessee's overrated. They beat Bama, which is great, but I won't be shocked, man, if it's a third quarter and that's a game.
Kentucky needs it to be, but because biggest disappointment in the conference this year, Kentucky and Oklahoma probably?
Yeah.
I would think so. Kentucky had a lot of expectations coming into the year. Quickly, before we get to the cocktail party, does Miami have any problems with Duke tomorrow?
Yes.
That's a noon kick, too. That's a weird...
You know why Miami has problems with Duke? Because Miami's had problems with a couple teams they have no business having problems with.
Yeah.
Miami's arguably the most overrated team in the country, in my opinion.
What did you make of Cristobal using that press conference setting to say, hey, high school kids, look at where we are compared to where basically Florida and Florida State are?
I think it's easy to talk when you're up like that.
I thought it was a good move. It was a good move for him because he's right.
Sure, it's a good move today.
Yeah. Oh, it could come back to haunt him, no question.
Would that have been a good move last year when Mike Norvell was undefeated and was beating the hell out of Miami and beat Florida? Would that have been a good move for him to do? And then this year, people can just play that clip over and over when he's got DJ, you need to get a job out there, and Brock Glenn out there trying to make plays. Would that have been it's a good move right now because they're undefeated, they're playing well. It's not going to take a lot for the tables can turn quickly is all I'm saying. And to give yourself a clip out there like that is risky business.
I just think Miami, this is not sour grapes. They're clearly the best team in the state. And their last 4 games are Duke, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, Syracuse. They're going to go to the playoff at either 12-0 or 13-0 or 12-1.
That's what I'm saying too. They've played nobody. Right. He's talking like this.
And my point is, like, when they get to the playoff and they run into an Oregon or an Ohio State or a Georgia,
they're going to get destroyed.
They're going to get beat.
They're going to get destroyed.
Yeah, they're going to get beat. But they will be in the playoff, so kudos to them. And by the way, if they're not in the playoff, it's a disaster at this point with the remaining schedule. I'm tired of picking Florida State to win. I'm not going to do it. I picked them to beat SMU. I picked them to beat Duke. They're the worst team I've seen in my lifetime. Again, I'm 41, so I was born in 83. I remember football going back to probably 1990. So in the last 3.5 decades, I've never seen a Florida State team this bad. They're at home against North Carolina tomorrow. North Carolina's not anything any good either. But, Graham, I just think Florida State, their offense is maybe the worst in college football. I mean, do you give the Noles a chance against North Carolina tomorrow?
No.
I don't either. And I wonder what that crowd will be like in Tallahassee, too, for a 1-7 football team playing North Carolina.
This Florida State team this year is worse than any team Willie Taggart ever trotted out there.
The very end of Bowden, before they forced him out, and then the years of Taggart are the only teams that I can compare this team to, and I agree. This is the worst team that I've seen. And that brings us to the cocktail party. We've talked about it. You have 34-21. I have 34-20. We did not do that before the show. We basically have the same exact score. Quickly, your expectations for DJ Lagway in his first cocktail party tomorrow?
My expectations is for him to play pretty well. I think Florida is going to run him a little more, use his legs a little more, and allow that.
Got to be careful about
I know.
They have nothing behind him.
Slide. You got to slide.
Get out of bounds, young man.
I think he's going to play well. The thing I've been worried about all week, and I'm not trying to speak this into existence, it's just I'm just talking about it, and it's something I'm worried about him wanting to be the hero and doing something dumb in the first half. I'm worried about him forcing a throw in a double coverage that's not there. He likes the deep ball. Georgia knows he likes the deep ball. They're going to have safeties waiting on it. I'm a little worried about that. And can that one play, when you're already not the more talented team, can that be a big problem? Maybe.
I think you have to know Kirby's going to bait him into something.
Correct.
You're going to, accept that as reality going in, that there's going to be a bad pick tomorrow because Kirby Smart might be the best defensive mind in America. They're going to bait the true freshman into something. The question is, can he overcome that?
I've been saying it all week. The defensive game plan, in my opinion, that Georgia is going to throw at him is they're going to send 5, even 6 at times, make him make quick decisions, and knowing that kind of his default is liking to push the ball downfield, they're going to send extra pressure and then have safety sitting back. So where Lagway can win is play a little bit Graham Mertzy. 5 yards, 10, the middle of the field, and I don't mean middle like between the hashes, I mean middle like between 5 and 15 yards. To me, that's where Florida could get some profit and keep drives alive and keep moving the ball.
And keep that clock running and keep Carson Beck off the field.
You do not want to be in a track meet.
No.
If you're in a track meet, you're going to get killed.
No, I agree. Georgia's got superior talent. They're better at probably every position. You want 10-play, 75-yard, 6.5-minute drives.
Correct. You want that first drive against UCF.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
man. You know what? It's not going to sell a lot of tickets. But if you tell me they come out, get 3 yards, 2nd and 7, get 3 yards, 3rd and 4, get 4 yards and a first down, I would take that all day tomorrow.
The entire game. The entire damn game.
Absolutely.
I would have no problem with that.
Enjoy the cocktail party. Again, I don't think any of us are actually expecting Florida to win, but if they do, well, what an interesting Saturday night it'll be in downtown Jacksonville.
And we got to get to one last thing.
Yes.
I got to tell you, we have to say on record, I have to tell Hack why he's wrong about a non-Gator related topic. You said last week, you said some nonsense last week. Hack.
Okay, interesting.
You said Cam Ward is probably the Heisman favorite right now.
Yeah.
No, sir.
Who is?
No, sir.
Don't tell me Travis Hunter.
Hunter is now plus 200 to win the Heisman, which is a big shift from plus 270 on Tuesday. Dylan Gabriel is second.
Okay.
Ashton Genty is third.
Genty won't win it because he's the running back.
Cam Ward is fourth.
I give you credence for Dylan Gabriel because he's the quarterback of the number 1 team in the country. I'm telling you, if it's Cam Ward versus Travis Hunter and Miami's undefeated and you're the starting quarterback of the Miami Hurricanes and you're undefeated going to the college football playoff, there is not a chance he will not win the Heisman Trophy. Not a chance. Because at that point, Travis Hunter is going to have 3 or 4 losses, and they're going to be getting ready for the Alamo Bowl.
Okay. I might not disagree with you there because I just know how Heisman voters tend to vote.
It's become a quarterback award for the most part.
Who, in your opinion, should be the Heisman Trophy winner?
Well, Travis Hunter's a very, very good player.
So you're going to say someone else, though?
I mean, dude, Cam Ward...
No.
Miami won 6 games last year. He's got him 8-0 and number like 5 in the country.
You realize
that is all Cam Ward.
We have never seen a player like Travis Hunter in like 50 years of college football.
That's not true. I mean, not to this. I mean, well, yeah, you have like Hines Ward at Georgia. There have been guys that have done offense and defense. Maybe
that
not
start,
to this
that
extent.
start every snap,
Well,
and they're the best receiver and the best corner on their team. That we have not seen. A guy that could legitimately be drafted top 5 for either position. No, we have not. We have not seen that.
Has the Heisman gone to the best player every year or the most deserving quarterback?
It's usually the most deserving quarterback, but a guy like Travis Hunter has not been in the race. Travis Hunter is different. Travis Hunter is not even Desmond Howard, who won the Heisman.
Yeah.
Or Desmond Howard or Charles Woodson? Charles Woodson, sorry.
Well, they both won the Heisman.
So it was Desmond Howard, sorry. Would play like sparingly on offense, like catch a screen pass here.
No, that was Charles Woodson.
Or Charles Woodson, sorry. I was getting mixed up. Sorry, Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson would play like sparingly on offense. He'd like catch a screen pass here and there. Travis Hunter is their best receiver and then goes right back on the field on defense and matches up on the other team's best receiver as their best corner. That is unheard of.
Here's what we'll do.
He plays like 100 snaps a game.
If it's clear a month from now that Hunter and Ward are the 2 top guys for the Heisman, I'll take Ward, you take Hunter, we'll do a steak dinner.
Okay, I'm in.
All right.
We'll shake on it
there
here.
You go.
We've shaken on it.
If it's obvious, it's those 2. Dylan Gabriel's a good one because he's the quarterback of the number 1 team in the country.
But okay, but I think there's 2 different arguments we're having here. One argument is who is going to ultimately win it. The other argument is who should.
Okay, my point is, I didn't think of Gabriel. If it's Hunter v. Ward, Ward's going to win it.
But do you think he should?
I think there's more of an argument there, but I don't know. You might have me in a conversation. Should Hunter win it? I'm just telling you, he's not going to win it if it's him and Ward. And Ward's undefeated and in the playoff.
Then why does Travis Hunter have the shortest odds, though? If a certain unnamed gambling site that does not spend money with 1010XL has him as why would they have him as a favorite if you think he has no shot to win?
I just don't think he does. I mean, I'm not no shots. I think he has a shot. I just don't think he's going to win.
Travis Hunter is a player we have not seen in 50 years in college football.
Yep. And Cam Ward took a 6-6 Miami team that was awful last year and lost the Pinstripe Bowl at Yankee Stadium to now an undefeated Miami Hurricane team that's 8-0 and destined for a playoff berth.
Does Cam Ward play defense?
No, he doesn't.
Correct.
No, he doesn't. But you know what he does do? He simply outscores everybody and has them undefeated. And we'll disagree with that for the next month. But we have a dinner on it. Or I'll buy you dinner. You can give me like an Awaken 180 shake or something. How about that? That is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green. Thank you for watching and listening to Gator Bytes. 1010XL.com, the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. And enjoy the world's largest outdoor cocktail party.